Ready. This is live from the Heartland, coming to you as we do every Saturday morning from 9 to 10, with news and views of people changing the world, making it a better place, and doing things we think you might want to know about. Good morning, Michael James.
Hi there, Katie. I'm buckling up this seatbelt over here. As you said,
well,
following direction.
Cap Mo is the one who said it. That's what I was...
oh, right on. Buckle up.
Yeah. He didn't have his earphones
stand up
on.
and be strong.
Stand up, indeed. These are times where that is called for. So, this week...
We got a really nice show. We're going to have 3 guests. We're going to start off in a few minutes with our new friend, Kelly Lowenstein. He's going to talk about Chile. And then we're going to have Susan Smith-Richardson. She's the editor-publisher of the Chicago Reporter, doing some great work. And then an old comrade sister of ours, we have Marguerite Horberg of the Hot House, the producer, director, co-founder of the Hot House, and an impresario who puts on musical events. We're going to talk about Latin music, Cuba, etc.
Indeed. Well, nice rundown. I was actually going to lead in with this week.
You want to try this? We get in sync? Okay,
No.
let's go. Let's get in sync. Okay, this week.
Well, right now, for example, the Wisconsin recount is underway. I'm scheduled to stand behind them on Sunday afternoon in Walworth County to watch the recount. We've got a lot of other folks going from Chicago up to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I noticed that the Trumpites are challenging the recount efforts in the 3 states right now.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
Well, I'm just sharing the info.
Well, I mean, they've tried
because we're politics, music, and info.
They've tried to interrupt it, and they clearly haven't in Wisconsin. It's underway, and the Michigan folks didn't take their challenge, so Michigan starts Monday, I believe.
You know, I got to ask you, Katie, you might know better than I. What's the ramifications of this? I mean, what if they show the recount and it's doubtful, but what if it turns out that Hillary won 2 of those states, particularly Pennsylvania and Michigan?
Well, actually, none of us knows the ramifications of that because this has never happened before. But that's a really good question, and I think it's on everyone's mind.
Well, I hope the recount goes well.
If, in fact, there is, you know, evidence of tomfoolery, hacking by any source, inside or outside the U.S., but especially if it came from outside the U.S., I would think that would be something that would concern us in the choosing of our president-elect. So, you know... More
announcements, more banter here.
Okay. The final neighborhood assembly for participatory budgeting is happening this morning.
In the 49th Ward.
10 a.m., Willie White Park, Fieldhouse at 1610 West Howard. Also today is Loyola Polar Palooza. It's the 3rd annual, and I think there's like animals and stuff happening. I don't know. There's
they
a
got polar bears
merry-go-round,
over there at the Loyola L stop.
They got polar bears, yeah. Also, St. Gertrude's and St. Nick's are both having their holiday craft fairs this weekend. So, you know, I know that all we get from the media and the TV right now is be the consumers we raised you to be, and I would encourage people to not be the consumers that you were raised to be. Rather, you know, do some small business shopping, some Pier 1, and that's not a small business. What's the one of 10,000 Villages shopping, who give their part of their goods to good causes? Really,
yeah, just try to get through the next 4 years. No shopping. Just get your basic victuals, you know, a few things you need.
Hunker down.
But we're going to just destroy capitalism by withdrawing.
I actually did look at a survival site last week. I'll do more on that at another time. We want to say get well to our comrade and partner on this show, Tom Clark, whose absence makes us feel goofier.
I feel free.
Tom is laughing. And Michael, I attended an opening of your exhibit last Sunday. That was wonderful.
I'm glad you liked it, Kate, and it's a collection of photographs, and there will be they're up at the Heartland through the 15th of January. On the 15th, in the late afternoon into the evening, will be a closing event, which also will be where I eat a piece of birthday cake, because I'm turning 75 the next day.
Woo-hoo!
And I'm gonna lay it on you right now. I have another show opening on the 13th at Yuri Eichen Gallery, and that's called Onward: Movements, Activists, Politics, and Politicians. A whole different set of photos.
All right, all right. I just want to mention, because you know, I'm Debbie Downer, and I have to. Today there will be a funeral held for a 19-year-old boy who was the latest victim of police violence in Chicago. 19-year-old boy.
You don't know his name?
Okay.
Let's you know. Let's also have a little bit of memories for our good friend Curly Cohen, who passed away. Who would worked with the Intercommunal Survival Committee. Was just a real foot soldier,
volunteers,
trooper for many years, and we're going to miss you, Curly. You did good in the world, and we're thanking you for it.
I will always remember Curly saying he really liked the moment when Harold Washington came to Bridgeport Volunteers for an event that Curly put together just so that the mayor would come, and the mayor called him Tiger. You're a tiger, Curly. And I know that Curly loved that.
Hey, Tom Clark, our co-host, is listening in because he wants to know what I'm feeling free from. Just joking around here.
All right, well, let's...
One more thing I wanted to just bring up. We've got an issue with, in our city, $215 million that were designated to go to the city from the state have been now blocked by Rauner, and it does not look like there be any override, and that bill is dead when the next session starts. So we've got a school crisis coming up. We certainly have a government crisis in this state as well as in the nation. And with all that said, let's start talking to some guests. Unless you've got a few more announcements.
I forgot. Everybody needs to know that the election isn't over until the Louisiana Senate has made their choice, and you can help because this will make a huge difference. This one vote in the Senate. A guy named Foster Campbell is in the runoff that happens on December 10th in Louisiana. We need your help, and you can call or you can look on DNC Community Engagement for the number to call to make calls into Louisiana for that guy's race.
You know, I got to say, Katie, I was watching Rachel Maddow last night in between the Bulls game when the Bulls beat the Cleveland team. That was great. And but she said, where are the Democrats? Pence is going down there to stump for the Republican candidate in the Senate race. What are happening with the Democrats? Where's Barack? Where's Michelle? Where's anybody going in to make this happen? I mean, the only thing I've seen is that people are asked to make calls for this guy. And I know a lot of people are doing that. But I don't know why we don't have any more support from the Democratic National Committee or whatever they're called. And if Schumer is not putting money into it, what's the deal?
Okay, if you hear Michael asking me to answer for the entire DNC at the moment, you'd be correct. That is what he's attempting to do, and I cannot. All I know is my mailbox has been pretty steadily full of groups who know what's going on, asking for help in this race pretty much since Election Day. So I don't know what Rachel reads, but, well, yeah, he's got a chance, maybe. So did Hillary, right? Okay. I think we're going to listen to some music to put us in the place that we're going with our next guest, which is the incredible, magical land of Chile, Sudamerica. Welcome to Live from the Heartland.
Thank you very much. I've been a fan of the Heartland, Susan Smith Richardson, and Hot House for years, so being able to be together with everybody is real exciting and talk about the work, and I really appreciate everything Lynn and Morgan and Nolan are doing to make the show happen. Thank you very much.
Man, what a guy. This is Jeff Kelly Lowenstein.
Yes, and what was Victor Jara just singing about?
Well, he was talking about how life can change so fast, and the 5 minutes.
Cinco
minutos, and the smile. So he was really evoking a certain time in the country and what the country is confronted.
So, Jeff Kelly Lowenstein, we read your book, The Chilean Chronicles, which is Moments in Memory 40 Years After the Pinochet Coup. So many U.S. citizens are guilty of being pretty isolated from the rest of the world, and you and I spoke before we came on the air about, I remember knowing about this as it was going on and feeling pretty lonely in that knowledge as a 23-year-old, caring very much about South America and very much about Chile and the kind of revolution that was being tried out there. And there was very little awareness up here, much less reaction to it, and to an awareness of the U.S.'s role in the coup. So if you could maybe bring us back to what did you know of the coup? Where were you when it happened, and how is it that so many years later you wound up with this project?
Yeah, well, the coup happened on September 11th, 1973. So for Chile and Chileans, September 11th has been a big day.
All that time.
For all that time.
Right.
For us, of course, it's since 2001 here in the United States, but for Chileans, it's really been for over 40 years. And as you said, Salvador Allende was a democratically elected, openly socialist government. He was elected in 1970 with a plurality of the vote. He never got a full majority. The highest he got was about 37%. But he was moving to really build a different kind of society. And of course, this was during the Cold War, where there was a real fear about the spread of communism on the United States side. So,
you know, that Cold War was kind of hot at that point.
Well,
it was just being fought in a couple of different fronts.
Yeah,
Vietnam and a few others.
Vietnam, in Africa as well,
Exactly.
Angola, Mozambique. But the Nixon White House on the U.S. side determined that they really, through the CIA, really wanted to overthrow and get rid of Allende. And then within Chile, Allende's policies among some people had become very unpopular.
Like the truck drivers.
Yes, we were talking a little bit about that before. Yeah, the truck drivers, he had nationalized the copper mines, the economy had been in tough shape, but the other part to remember is that he was ruling or governing, but at no point did he have a majority of the people behind him, and so the number of people who were saying, hey, we got to make a change from the beginning, from the moment he came in, was pretty high. And so those factors went together. The U.S. did participate in the overthrow.
The destabilization.
There was a destabilization before, there were protests on the street, but then on September 11th they bombed La Moneda, which is the government, the site of the government. Allende gave a very famous speech in which he basically said, "Viva Chile, viva the people, and I've been betrayed," and so on. And it's very important to note that Augusto Pinochet, the general who then led this very oppressive dictatorship, he had been aligned with Allende. And there's a one of the...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, one of the events that I write about in the book was this showing of this documentary building up to the 40th anniversary, Los Muertos No Callan. And the widow of one of the very high-level Allende, members of the Allende administration, reads this letter written in the summer before the coup by Pinochet.
Right.
This flowery, almost obsequious language.
That was an amazing thing to read.
Yeah. So
he didn't even know what he was stepping into.
Well, it's a very important point. And Hugo Rojas, who wrote the introduction, and we met through Stacy Platt, a dear friend who actually teaches here at Loyola and does incredible work with young people. Hugo talked about how even up as late as around September 9th, Pinochet wasn't totally in on the coup. And he was telling us this whole story about how they were giving Pinochet the pen to sign the document that said he would go with the coup, and he was kind of pretending he couldn't find the pen and stalling. And yet once he came in, he really brutally repressed the people. But it just kind of making the point that it was not an inevitable action, but the consequence of people on both sides and moments, and then how people moved into those moments.
Some of the ramifications were that, how do you say the name? Letelier, the guy who was
Letelier.
Who was blown up.
Yes.
In
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, a dear friend of ours, Alejandra Matus, who I write about in the book, she wrote a very powerful biography of Letelier. But Letelier was in the United States, there was an ambassador, and he called out Pinochet
over and over again.
Over and over again,
Right.
and very said basically they've betrayed. I'm a Chilean, and they've betrayed the country, and this is what they've done, and then they killed him.
Yep.
And he and Ronnie Moffat in 1976, and so you think about that. It's 3 years
in D.C.,
after,
right?
In
They blew
D.C.
up the car?
In D.C., blew up the car. So you think about the lengths that it wasn't only within the confines of his country that the man had gone from not being able to find the pen, not being sure what he was going to do, to then actually authorizing and carrying out an assassination in another country, in the capital of the United States. That sort of shows the extent of where that administration and leadership was willing to go at that time.
So what we haven't said yet is that you went, and was it a return trip to you? Had you ever been to Chile before? No.
No,
You had been trying to go.
Yeah, I
Fulbright.
applied to the Fulbright program 4 times starting in
Right.
2000, and before I actually got it in 2012, and then we went in 2013, and my wife, Dunry, spearheaded the sale of our house, so we sold the house the day before we left. So we're really casting off on a great adventure, but it was a country we had wanted to go to for a long time. A dear friend, Marjorie Augustine, a poet and human rights activist who really helped us while we were there. She's from Chile, and she had written a lot and talked a lot about our country, so we really wanted to be there for a while.
So let me ask you this. Did you have in mind, did you have a picture of what you wanted to come away from that period of study and work in Chile with?
Well,
Or were you wide open?
I was open, but I definitely, ironically, we realized that it happened when it did, that we were there. We had heard that Chilean folks tend not to be that emotional, but we were there for the 40th anniversary of the coup, the 25th anniversary of the no vote. We were there for Chile qualifying for the World Cup. We were there for the presidential election. So we were there during a really extraordinary time.
Really?
And so I went, I think one thing I would say, and we were talking about that, we had a beautiful launch event with Public Narrative, Tom's old shop, community media workshop on Wednesday. And I really went thinking, based on kind of my own experience and some of the kind of images that I had seen in movies, that everybody in Chile was united against the dictatorship. Everybody disliked it, it was a bad thing, but we found out once we got there that was really untrue, and it's a very divided country even now about what that period meant, what the past is. And so we would meet people on the street. I wrote about them in a couple of cases where we just start talking. They'd say, things were really better under the dictatorship. Streets were clean, no crime, economy went well, and there's a very, very direct link to Chicago because of the Chicago boys, Milton Friedman, really strong neoliberal economic policies. A lot of the elite sons came north, studied at the University of Chicago, and then went back down. So there's a really very strong connection. But I went open, but I definitely had a certain view that people were united against the dictatorship, and that really just was not the case. It's a very, still now, contested memory.
I would imagine you could argue that when people say things were better under the coup, it might have been that I don't know what the world economy was like and what other factors play into that.
Yeah.
But I was, in reading your book, The Chilean Chronicles, I was taken back a little bit by the division that you indicate still exists in the country. And I was asking you in the car on the way down here about the President Bachelet, how do you say it?
Bachelet.
Bachelet,
Yeah.
who was just recently reelected.
Yeah.
And but didn't win in the first round.
Right.
And she had to have a runoff. So there clearly is some solid division in the country.
There's tremendous division, and it was very interesting because we had the opportunity to go to Argentina. We went to Buenos Aires. We saw the mothers at the Plaza de Mayo. And in that country, which had a dictatorship from 76 to 83, tens of thousands of people disappeared. It's basically unanimous that the dictatorship was a bad thing. But to your point, Mike, in Chile, in part because the economy did do better under Pinochet, especially for certain members of the community. They had very rough times in the early 80s and so on, but on the whole, the economy grew and became stable. There is kind of that division about really what will the memory be of that time. And the other part that was very powerful about being there at that moment was that really the country, starting from September 1st up through September 11th, they were just openly confronting what had happened in a way that hadn't happened before. So there were documentary films, there were plays, there were scholarly conferences, there were meetings in libraries, people talking about what had happened. So there was almost like this eruption of memory of people saying, hey, there was a coup, this happened, this is what we think it meant, but it's still divided.
Jeff Kelly Lowenstein, can you give us a little bit of a picture of Peru? I mean, it's a long, skinny country. Chile, my apologies.
Yeah.
Close, but no cigars.
close.
And kind of where things are at today. Like, is there where are the younger people at? Are they they'd be millennial types down there? Are they moving in a kind of a more capitalist way, or are they? Is there a strong support for the current president, and what kind of is going on?
Yeah. So well, Chile.
And I guess the one thing I want to say, what is the population? I mean, how much of it is more bourgeois or upper middle class as opposed to peasants, etc.?
Yeah. So Chile is an extremely long and thin country. It's about 2,700 miles. So you think of that, that's almost from, say, Massachusetts almost all the way to California, and it's only about 100 miles wide.
Right.
So it's this extremely long, thin, and it's been geographically isolated. And I actually dedicate the book to the people al paisito al sur del mundo, this little country on the south of the world. And so there's a certain part of the community that still feels that we're sort of isolated from the rest of the continent and from the rest of the world. At the same time, it's also very centralized in Santiago. Santiago, there's about 16 million Chileans, about 7 million are in Santiago, and Pinochet really emphasized the centralization of Santiago. It's a big, sprawling city. It's very stratified in terms of wealth. It's physically beautiful. It's got one of the largest deserts in the world, the Atacama Desert. It's also got this incredibly beautiful set of mountains, Torres del Paine in the south. And what's happening now, what's so interesting, and part of what I did a project with my brother, John Lowenstein, who's a photographer. He came down, we got a grant from the Pulitzer Center. The third part of that project looked at Chileans who had grown up during or after the dictatorship and were trying to learn from the past and try and work so that the country would not go back. So there were people working on transparency. There's a beautiful Habitat for Humanity organization. We met the first openly gay elected official who uses social media like crazy. So it's really a very interesting society transition in flux, and just because of technology and the internet, it's becoming more integrated in the world. Santiago is one of the strongest, most stable economies, so it attracts people from all over the continent. We met a lot of Afro-Colombians, hundreds of thousands of Peruvians came after the coup with Fujimori. There's Argentines. So Chile is still emerging from that dictatorship, but it is becoming more of the global community.
Jeff Kelly Lowenstein, I really appreciate what you put together in this book. It was not just about politics. It was not just about social
wine,
social
food,
scene.
sports. It's all in the book.
It was about food and wine and celebration, and I understood Pisco Sour, having drunk many of them myself in South America. But for you now, I guess one thing, a lot of this came off of your blog.
Yes.
You wrote a blog and you assembled it into this book.
Yes.
Is blog writing, is it harder than it looks?
I really love blogging. I put out 2 books this year, and they were both compilations of work that I had done initially on the blog and then refined and synthesized. And I really first got into it from, I used to work at the Chicago Reporter, where Susan is editor and publisher and doing such wonderful work. And a friend and colleague, Fernando Diaz, challenged me when, I don't know if you guys remember Beauty Turner, but she was a wonderful housing activist here in Chicago, and she had passed suddenly in 2008, shortly after President Obama got elected. Oh. And so she worked with Eitan Mikaeli, who I know you're going to talk about later.
Yeah, he was on the show.
Yeah, so Beauty passed, and I was saying, man, it's so sad that she died. And so Fernando said, so Jeff, you going to write about it on your blog? So he was kind of challenging me.
Sure.
And so I said, yeah, I am. And so I started blogging. I loved working at the Reporter, and it's very deep, investigative, very heavily edited work. So it was just a chance for me to really spread my voice and really kind of write. And then especially being in Chile at that time, it was just a beautiful chance to really write a lot about what was happening.
Jeff Kelly Lowenstein, we want to thank you for coming on the Live from the Heartland show. And I want to say hello to our mutual friend who's down there in Chile, Susan Strauss. Yes. I bet she's listening because I kept Facebook and everybody in the world that you were going to be on. Hopefully you'll come back on sometime because you got a lot to share.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you. It's beautiful to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Stick around for the group photo.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland, WLUW 88.7 FM on your dial. We'll be right back.